But while we wait, it would be very nice if all the people who have joined could write not only their name, but also the country they're from. So so that everyone here at Zoom can see it, because then we know how many people from each country have joined, and that's very nice when we're going to like evaluate these lectures and this online seminar. So please put your name and your country in your Zoom name. That would be a great help.
Vi går herfra.
Ja. All right. Again, welcome to the new people. And as I said just before, if you can put your name and your country in your Zoom name, it would be a great help. We have interpretation here at Zoom. So if you go to the bottom, there is like different options. And if you want interpretation to Danish, you have to have a sharp eye, because there's not a Danish channel, but there's a Japanese channel. So if you want Danish translation, it's on the Japanese channel. And likewise with Italian, if you want Italian translation, it's on the Chinese channel. And the other channels are pretty self-explanatory. And Eric, who's going to do the lecture for us today, is going to speak in English. All right, so now we are ready to start. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this first lecture of Rebel Online Youth Seminar. For those of you who don't know it, Rebel Online Youth Seminar is going to be a line of like 9 different lectures and roundtables that we're going to have over the next 3 weekends. This is the first lecture. And the topic for today is Capitalism, a system of permanent crisis. My name is Freya, and I'm going to chair this event. And we're so lucky that we're joined by Erik Toussaint, who's going to do the lecture. And it's also your birthday, Erik, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Erik, you are, just so everyone knows who you are. You are an educated historian and political scientist. Then you're also a spokesperson for the KADTM, Committee for the Cancellation of Third World Debt. Then you're also author of numerous books. And as far as I've understood, the latest one is called A History of Sovereign Debts and Their Repudiation. And yeah, then you're also a member of the International Committee and the Bureau of the Fourth International. So quite an impressive resume. And we're so glad that you would like to join us and like that you want to do this lecture for us. We're going to have 45 minutes for the lecture. And then after the 45 minutes, we're going to have a debate. And I'll tell you how you sign up for an intervention and stuff like that when we get to the debate. As I've said before, please put your name and the country you're from in your Zoom name, because then we know how many different people have joined us. And also, we have translation options. So if you go down to the bottom of Zoom, you can pick different languages. If you want Danish translation, as I also said before, you have to choose the Japanese channel. And if you want Italian translation, you have to choose the Chinese channel. And yeah, I think that is actually it. So Erik, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you today. And actually, it's my birthday. I am 66 years old today. But it's also another, for me, this month of July 2020 is also the opportunity to celebrate 50 years of participation to the Fourth International. I decided to ask to be a member, a militant of the Fourth International 50 years ago at the end of June 1970. So I am very happy to be with you, participants of a youth virtual camp of the Fourth International. We are confronted with a multidimensional crisis of the capitalist system at a world scale, an ecological crisis, a health crisis, economic crisis at the level of ideology and in some way civilization, and political crisis in different countries because different government or system of governments are considered by more and more people as illegitimate. And there are crises between different fraction of the bourgeoisie or countries or powers and superpowers at a world scale. We can also speak about the trade World Trade crisis. That's the first point. So we have a multidimensional crisis. This crisis is clearly related to the characteristic of the capitalist system. That's the first point. The second point is to say that we are living a very huge economical crisis, but this economical crisis is not has not been at the first stage created by the epidemic. The economical crisis began before. There was a recession in the German economy already in the year 2019. The same in different industrial branches of the US economy, and several major emergent economies were also in crisis, like Brazil or South Africa, for instance. We saw a crisis at the level of the production already at last in 2019, and also all the symptoms of a generalized new financial crisis. A new financial crisis appeared or exploded before Christmas 2018 in Wall Street. The Federal Reserve of the United States intervened to support the markets, the financial markets. We had another incident, financial incident from September 2019 to December 2019. So we had the economical crisis which emerged before the epidemic, but it's absolutely clear that the epidemic succeeded by a generalized lockdown provoked an amplification of the economical crisis. And now, because of the coronavirus and how the government dealt with the coronavirus crisis, we are assisting to the major economical capitalist crisis since 70 years, since the crisis of the 1930s of the previous century. And in this crisis, it is clear that the question of the debt and the question of the private banks are vital. They are part, in some way, of the origin of the economical crisis, because they are linked to the financialization of the capitalist system, which is an evolution of the capitalist system since the year 1980s and the neoliberal offensive, which deregulated the financial sector. And it is related to the decrease in the rate of profit also, which had as one of its consequences a decrease in investment in production. The major corporation, not only financial corporation, but also a corporation like Apple, producing iPhones and MacBooks, etc., are giving the priority in the financial activities. Enterprise or corporation like Ford, also General Motors, General Electrics are also very actively involved in financial activity, which means speculation, because they are not investing or reinvesting their profit in increasing the production. They are diverting an important part of the profit, distributing first them to the shareholders, the 1% richer of the world, and also buying financial products, structured product, toxic product, and this financialization of the activity of the big corporation provoke also an increase of the debt of the corporate sector. We know that in the mainstream narrative, the question of public debt is underlined as causes of the problem of our countries and government, but in reality, the principal increase in debt is not in the public sector, but in the private sector, and mainly the corporate sector through the development of the corporate bond market. I will not develop this aspect. I wrote several articles on that, showing like other authors like Michael Roberts, but also Robert Brenner, etc., that one of the main activities of the big corporation is to buy back their own shares in the stock exchange, which provoked an inflation of prices and assets, financial assets prices. So the debt is an important issue because it is linked to the financialization of the capitalist system, and the banks are playing also a major role in the crisis. It was absolutely clear that the 2007-2008 crisis began in the subprime sector in the US economy. It was linked to overproduction in the building of real estate, of houses, of commercial real estate, and provoked a crisis at the level of the mortgage debt in the subprime sector. And it was linked to an evolution of the banks, the big private banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, but also Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers, etc., which created new financial toxic products. And in this crisis, in the present crisis, we should say that the government, in reaction to the previous crisis, didn't introduce a new discipline in the financial sector and in the banks. And so the major banks in Europe, like Deutsche Bank, Commerzbank, BNP Paribas, HSBC, but also in the Nordic countries, are nearly bankrupt. They are supported by the central bank, by the European Central Bank, by the Bank of England, which are giving them a lot of financial liquidities to bail them out. And these banks are not using this money, lending this money to households or to little and middle enterprise or big corporation to create jobs and develop the production. They use this money in speculating in the financial sector. So we have a vicious circle, speculative circle. And so the need to propose, to convince people to struggle for radical changes at the level of the debt and at the level of the banks is vital for us. We should convince the people of the necessity of the expropriation of the capitalist shareholders of the private banks and the necessity to transfer the private financial sector to the public sector, to make, to create a public service of the financial sector, and giving the monopoly of the banking activity to the public sector, which would represent a very big change in the situation. At the level of the debt, we should struggle to denounce the illegitimate debt, public illegitimate debt or odious debt accumulated by the government to bail out the banks and the financial system and the big corporation through the previous crisis and the actual crisis and the present crisis. We should also raise the question of the household debt, the debt of the families, of the popular classes, because you know that, for instance, in different European countries, in the USA, in South Africa, in Japan, in Chile, the student debt is a very huge problem for the popular classes. In the US, 1 student on 3 students have a student debt of $40,000. The same in Japan. And also the question of mortgage debt in countries like the UK, in Spain, in Greece, the question of the mortgage debt of the families of the popular classes. And when they are too much indebted, over indebted, and incapable because they lost the jobs, they are expelled, evicted from the houses. So the revolutionaries should add to the program the question of the cancellation or abolition of the private debt, private illegitimate debt of the families. Just to mention, Freja, when you say that I'm part of the committee for the cancellation of third world debt, the CEDTM now, we are not anymore speaking about cancellation of third world debt, that the committee for the abolition of illegitimate debt in general, public illegitimate debt and private illegitimate debt. Okay, there is some idea in a part of the left presently following this idea that we, in some way, a part of the left is thinking that the government are going back to Keynesian policies because they see, and it's very clear in Europe, that they decided from March 2020 till now to say that there is no anymore the limit of the equilibrium of the budget. The government can increase the public debt, etc. And so a part of the left is thinking that represents a very huge change of the policy of this government, and that in some way they are going back to the Keynesian policy. And we don't agree with that. Of course, and it's evident, they are increasing the public debt. But the Keynesianism of the 1930s in the US economy, or the welfare state after the Second World War in Europe, is not only a policy of public intervention of the economy and accumulation of debt. And in reality, the public debt during the glorious 30 years after the Second World War, the level of the public debt was around 30% of the growth of the GDP. Now it's around 100% in several major economies, and in Italy it's 150%. Keynesianism was public intervention in the economy under the pressure of the mobilization of the popular classes. The workers' movement was very active in the year 1930s in the USA, and of course in the resistance to Nazism in the Second World War. And after the Second World War, the capitalist classes had to give some concession to the workers' movement and to the left. So we have had a nationalization of several industries, of banks, and the salaries increased, the social, the pension system improved, and so Keynesianism was also linked to concession to the popular classes. When in the present situation, it's not the case. You have a very broad public intervention to bail out the main corporation. Of course, they are giving some help to the poor with the unemployment compensation, indemnization, but it's also a gift to the capitalist classes, because that's the public government who are paying this unemployment compensation to the people who lost their job. So I don't think, and as Force International, we don't think that we are going back to Keynesianism. We are thinking that the capitalist offensive is still going on, and it's much more brutal. And of course, we can see that a lot of big corporations are eliminating tens of thousands of jobs and making a pressure on the workers to accept reduction of wages. So the war classes, the class struggle is increasing, and we cannot make the mistake of thinking that the government are taking a turn to positive public intervention in the economy. As we have seen, no government take a decision to force big pharma, private big pharma, to produce vaccines to confront the coronavirus. No enterprise was forced to produce masks or equipment, health equipment, to protect the population. We have not seen such type of intervention. And if we analyze the decision of the EU summit, of course, the mainstream narrative is saying, see, now we have solidarity between the different countries, members of the European Union, because the European Commission will borrow money in favor of the countries of the European Union who need some financial help. But if you analyze what is exactly the decision of the 21st of July EU summit, you will see that they will borrow something like 360 billion euros for the next 7 years. So imagine 360 billion euros, which should be divided between 27 countries. It's nothing. And they will borrow this money to the banks. They will ask the banks to lend this money to the European Commission. They are not issuing debt directly through the European Central Bank. And if you analyze the other part of the decision of the 21st of July EU summit, you will see that to finance this plan of 750 billion euros, for 7 years, the middle of this amount will come from transfer of the budget, and they will reduce the part of the budget in the health sector. They will reduce the Erasmus program at the level of the students. So we cannot say that in some way the decision of this EU summit is positive, like a part of the left is saying. We should reject the decision of the EU summit and to show exactly what it is. And we should denounce all the major decisions they have taken to confront the coronavirus crisis. Of course, we agree with the lockdown, but we disagree with the way they are now forcing people to come back to the normal activities with the danger of a second wave of the epidemic. So, coming to some conclusion of what we need to do. We should think about the situation, the difficult situation of the popular classes in Europe, to recognize that there is a lack of capacity of common resistance, international resistance to the capitalist offensive. The previous initiative at European scale of the last 20 or 30 years entered in crisis. I refer, for instance, in the a little less than 30 years ago, we created the Euro March against unemployment. And we succeeded in convoking big marches with tens of thousands of people in the street. In Amsterdam, European demonstration in Amsterdam against the Maastricht Treaty in the 90s. After that, we, as Force International, as part of the Alter Globalization movement, we participated actively to the World Social Forum and the European Social Forum, to the big demonstration in Genova in June 2001. But this process of the European Social Forum entered in crisis. It is linked to a wrong political orientation of several social movements. I refer to, for instance, to the support of the Italian Social Forum, to the political orientation of the Communist Refundation Party entering the Prodi government more or less 15 years ago, and the consequences of demoralization it had and disorientation it had on this very important social movement in Europe, the Italian social movement, which played a role of vanguard in the year from 2001 until 2005, 2006. We also, so this process of the European Social Forum entered in crisis. There had been some initiative like the Alter Summit, and the Plan B conference after what happened in Greece in 2015 and the capitulation and betrayal of the Syriza leadership in 2015. So the initiative of the Plan B and the conference of the Plan B in Madrid, in Paris, in Copenhagen. But these Plan B conferences also entered in a process of crisis, division between the parties or leaders, political leaders who were at the basis of the creation of the Plan B initiative. So there is a need to create and to participate to a new social and political broad movement. I think that we need to convince people that we should put together the political organization and the social movement. And this challenge, it's very complicated because we need to create a bridge between the old generation, and of course I am part of the old generation, and the new generation of the youth who mobilized itself against climate change last year, or against the repression and racism. We should create a bridge with the feminist movement who succeeded in countries like Spain to convoke women's strikes, the movement, the Black women movement in Poland, etc. And it's a very difficult challenge because we have seen that this very broad movement, which happened simultaneously in different European countries, have not been followed by a creation of a European network. People are mobilizing themselves. They are in contact through internet and Facebook and other social networks. But after the mobilization, there is not a process of accumulation and creation of structure. And the question is, can we help to convince people of the need of creating democratic structure and allowing radical left organization, radical left parties, citizen movement, social movement, different trade union to build together a new broad political and social movement. That's, I think, one of our challenge. The other challenge is a specific challenge to the Fourth International. Are we able, as Fourth International, to take initiative at a European scale, a campaign, or to convoke a broad European conference of revolutionaries, which could be an open conference of revolutionaries. I am launching this idea. It's not elaborated directly at the level of the Bureau of the Fourth International. It's to discuss it with you. Do you think that there is some possibility, of course, after the lockdown, to convoke in the near future some European Conference of Revolutionaries? We did that. For instance, I was very young. It was 50 years ago. The Fourth International convoked in Brussels in October 1971 a conference of, we named that a conference for the Red Europe. And there were a lot of young revolutionaries coming from all over Europe who participate to this initiative convoked by the Fourth International, and people like Ernest Mandel, Tariq Ali, who was part of the leadership of the Fourth International, Livio Maitan, Daniel Ben Said, Alan Krivin, or the speakers of this Red Europe conference. Are we able to convoke such a conference and to give enthusiasm to people who want to see that they are not isolated in their own countries, that we can gather thousands of people in favor of revolutionary perspective. So it's just an idea to discuss it. And of course, after this epidemic, the question of going back to youth camp of the Fourth International next year, a strong one, allowing an accumulation of new forces is very crucial for the future of the Fourth International. So it's I think I just reached the end of my speech, and I've respected the timing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was really informative. So now we're going to open up for debate. And Eric also raised some questions for debate, also when it comes to the strategy of the left and of the revolutionary left. The way that we're going to do it is that you can sign up for doing an intervention in the chat. In the chat, you should write your name, your gender, and which language you wish to speak in. And then I will give you the word, and I'll try to divide the speaking time between male and female and non-binaries, so we don't have one gender dominating and taking up all the time. You'll max have 2 minutes per intervention, so that as many people as possible get to take the word and share their thoughts. And I'll hold up this beautiful sign when you have 30 seconds left. So yeah, sign up in the chat if you have something to say, questions or thoughts or comments, maybe something about the situation in your country and like protest against banks or the financial sectors, Yes. Actually, I have a clarifying question, Eric, that we maybe can start off with. You said at some point that like some of the like initiatives we've seen governments push forward here during COVID-19, for instance, the payment of workers' salaries, or at least like part of the workers' salaries, was also like just as much serving the capitalist class. Could you elaborate a bit on that, please?
It's in the declaration, in the statement we made as Force International, we say at the beginning of the crisis and the lockdown, we say that, of course, people and workers should receive their salaries, and unemployed people should receive financial help, of course. But we also said that the government should intervene to force the corporation to give back the money, because to return the money or part of the money to the public budget, because in the partial or part-time or unemployment is also the responsibility of the bosses when you have a contract in a corporation. So the government didn't ask any effort from the capitalist classes. Nobody, absolutely no government, are speaking about COVID tax or special taxes on the rich to help the public finances. And so they increase the public debt officially to help the people and the economy in general, but in reality, the way they are doing that is giving a gift to the corporation, to the private shareholders of the big corporation. So we should raise this question, because a part of the people are thinking, yes, it's normal, it's a good thing what they did and what they are doing. And I am sure that a lot of leadership of trade unions say, it's a very good policy. Please keep on with this type of policy. But in a few months, as they will say, wow, the public debt has increased in a very huge, heavy way. And so we need new structural reforms and new efforts. So if we are not denouncing the way they are financing and helping the people, we will give them, to the government, some space to convince the people that we should need to make a collective effort to pay this debt, because it is a legitimate debt, because it has helped the people to pass through the crisis.
Thank you so much, Eric. So the next speaker will be Emilian, that uses the pronouns she or her, and she will speak in English.
Yeah, I mean, what Eric has been saying about sort of the way that coronavirus has led to a transfer of wealth from like even further from the working class to.
I didn't hear you at the beginning.
Oh, sorry.
The sound is on. Now I think that. Please speak.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, what Eric was saying about the way that COVID crisis has transferred wealth from the working class to the wealthy has been like really true in the United States, especially where we've had a massive unemployment crisis. I think by now at least 50 million people have filed for unemployment. And even though unemployment benefits, which were sort of very paltry in terms of like, we had like a one-time sort of $1,000 stimulus check to everyone in the U.S. That sort of staved off some of the worst of the crisis, but those will be ending at the end of this month, even though it's clear that the economy and the public health crisis still is sort of going on without any end in sight. And it's actually, I think, the worst economic crisis in U.S. history, at least in terms of unemployment. It's even at a greater point than the Great Depression. And I think in the midst of all this, people have been radicalizing and are being won over to socialist politics more and more, especially like just given the way that the U.S. government's response has been to very like directly transfer more money to corporations to sort of bail out industries like the airline industry and other corporations that have been hurt, and while private healthcare suppliers have been massively enriched. Given the fact that in the US we don't have a public healthcare system, while people are like, strapped with medical debt and all sorts of debt because of the fact that so many people are unemployed right now, and it's really, I think, radicalized a lot of people and won them over to the need for like really transformative structural changes in the U.S. economy. I think a lot of people are radicalizing around the demand for the cancellation of student debt, for Medicare for all, which would be in effect to get rid of medical debt, which is a real problem in the U.S. And also for like other sorts of like stimulus measures that would like actually benefit the majority of people in the working class, like things like a Green New Deal, which I think is like one of the most important measures that we could pass, in the aftermath of this crisis, to sort of try to rebuild the economy again on like a different social footing, to sort of try to recover from some of the damage of this massive unemployment crisis. But yeah, I think it's a moment that has like really shown a lot of long-lasting problems in the U.S. economy, and in just the capitalist economy in general. But I think it has a particularly sort of severe dynamic here. And yeah, I think there is a potential to win over people to need for socialist organizations to really carry these struggles into the future in a long-term way, and also revolutionary politics. So it's a very bleak moment in a lot of ways, but also there's, I think, a bit of hope in terms of sort of growing audience for socialist politics.
Thank you.
Okay, it was a comment, and I agree with what you have said. I wrote an article about the U.S. economy and the policy of the Democrat Party and the Republicans. It was the CARES Act adopted by the Congress and the Senate of the USA. And for me, it was very sad to see that Bernie Sanders decided to vote in favor of this plan. And I was very happy with the decision of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez to vote alone in the Congress against this plan. And of course, for us in Europe, the mobilization of the people against racism in USA create a real enthusiasm. And it was very positive to see that it provoked an extension of the movement in countries like my country, Belgium, but also in UK, in France, with big demonstration also on concrete cases like the case of Adama Traoré assassination by the police. So I think that we should, in Europe, to inform more about what is happening in the USA, and to develop more collaboration between the radical left in Europe and the radical left in the USA, and including supporting Sanders when he make a positive and left declaration, and to be also capable to criticize him when he do the wrong thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll just ask another question, and then after me, we have an intervention for Dominic in English, I presume. So if you could elaborate a bit more also on like the link between the cancellation of private debt and the creation of public banks, because I imagine that those two would have to go like hand in hand, kind of. And also, like, if I go out and say to some of my friends or comrades, like, we should cancel all your private debt, like, and they're like, yeah, I would love that, but like, how? What would you like? What would the answer be, sort of? And yeah, then it's Dominic.
So now we listen to Dominic.
Yes.
Okay.
Then I think you can like answer after.
Okay.
Eric, I start by saying happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Dominic.
And then afterwards, I say thanks for a great presentation. Your analysis was spot on. So I really want to say a couple of things, and I hope I'll be able to do it in 2 minutes. So I mean, we have to. So I'll start off by saying I want to distinguish between 3 areas: analysis, program, and the question of internationalism. Okay. So I think in terms of and I'm not going to touch on all the exceptional points that Eric has made. The one point on the analysis is in relation to the debate around the resurgence of Keynesianism. And I agree with you completely. And just to say another thing that I've noticed or picked up while listening to you was that if you look at the so-called stimulus packages of most of the countries, you'll see that most of them are loan guarantees to commercial banks. So just in the way that you're describing what's coming out of the situation, I think also if you look at the facts, we see that in fact it's not a Keynesian push, and really it's a hyper form of financialization in reality. The second part in terms of the analysis relates to the question of a part of the programmatic question, and I'm going to start with some description, and then I'm going to ask the question. And I think that what we're seeing in the US and in other parts of the world is a rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, or the Black Lives Matter 2.0. And many on or some of the left dismiss Black Lives Matter, saying that, if you look at Walter Ben Michaels, if you look at Adolf Reed and some others, I think there's references in every part of the world where we are that says, no, this is taking us away from class struggles. And you make reference to the anti-feminist and anti-patriarchal struggles that we've seen around the world. And I think that Black Lives Matter in a similar light raise similar questions for me. But on the analytical part, does the question racial capitalism as a concept, as a frame of analysis within the global system of capitalism still stand beyond just being descriptive? And then really I want to talk about the balance of forces. And when we think about the balance of forces within all of our countries, we really, and I think you'd start to touch on this in a big way, we're really on the wane. And I mean, South Africa, only 26% of workers are unionized, for example. And if we think about sorry, Fraser, I'll wrap up. If we think about this deep crisis that we're coming into right now, the socio-economic crisis that we're facing, as Fraser was pointing out to, as big as the Great Depression, but probably bigger. And on the other hand, we think about the deepness of the political crisis that we're facing, deepness of the political consciousness, the lack of political consciousness, lack of political organization. Then for me, the question of the international is a secondary question, but an important question. How do we build and shift the balance of forces within our own countries? How do we relate to movements against gender-based violence and racism and the ecological crisis in a real way? And lastly, in this question is that how, in terms of the international, how do you relate to center-left initiatives like the Progressive International? Thanks, Claudia, for indulging me.
Well, that was almost 2 minutes. We'll just, if it's all right with you, Eric, we'll just take one more question and then you'll get to answer.
Okay.
Thoughts. So Martha, would you translate the Italian question?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Eric, can you hear me as well? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm reading and trying to translate. It's a long sentence. So it's a question from a comrade from Italy, Alessandro. He's asking what is the position of the FI, of the Fourth International, regarding the enhancement of the surveillance tools that big corporations like Google, Facebook are kind of using on workers. For instance, they extrapolate all the data of the behavior data of everybody that has a smartphone, for instance. What is your position on that? And particularly, what do you think about the mixture between public and private on the big data traffic, and what could be the consequences of this in the post-COVID era? Was it clear? I tried to translate. Okay.
Then Eric will get to answer, and after Eric has answered, we have a question from Enrique from Peru. And if you want to make an intervention, then it would be a good idea to sign up in the chat while Eric is talking, just so we have enough, so we know how much time we have to divide.
Okay, maybe beginning with the last question. Of course, there is a very big danger with what is happening with the control of private data by the big private corporation, and also the government and the repression repressive apparatus of the capitalist system. And we should adapt in some way our behavior as militant, knowing that the capacity to know exactly what we are doing has increased and constitute a very big stick to repress the popular movement. And of course, also, we have to support all initiatives taken against the GAFAs, the Amazon, Google, Facebook corporation. And they are different in different countries or at international level initiatives to denounce the power, the activity, etc. And so, just to say, you are right. What is happening at the level of the control of private data is very dangerous, and we have to adopt an active position to struggle against this evolution. To answer Dominique's last part of intervention, because I am not capable in a few minutes to elaborate about racism and capitalism, etc. I think it's fundamental to analyze and to show the relation between the racism and the capitalist system, as we analyze also patriarchy, patriarchal domination, and the capitalist system, etc. On the progressive international, for me it's clear that it is a mediatic coup, mediatic initiative taken by Yanis Varoufakis. It's not really, it's not a real broad construction of a new international organization. But I imagine that everybody who is listening has listened to this information about the creation of the Progressive International. You can visit the website and you will see that apparently it's a very broad initiative, because people like Naomi Klein, Noam Chomsky, Arundhati Roy, Bernie Sanders are part of this Progressive International. But in reality, as I told you, it is artificial and superficial creation of Varoufakis, the ex-finance minister of the Syriza government in 2015. He made a good casting. He had a good person to create something who could be a positive initiative, but in reality, it will not represent any tool, any effective tool to the struggle of the emancipatory, of the oppressed people. And if you read the program, it is a very confused program about exploitation of labor. It's totally ambiguous. So I would say it's more a liberal program in the sense of the liberals in the United States than left or radical left program. There are other initiatives. I received this morning another invitation to participate to the creation of the Fifth International. It is launched by some people historically linked with Samir Amin activity and legacy. But in the same way, I don't think it represents something really substantial. I say that because at the same time, as Fourth International, if we see in the future that there are real radical left forces, or it could be broader than radical left forces, but really combative and anti-capitalist forces are trying to create a new international. The Fourth International could think about participating to the creation of a new international. But it should be on the correct program, on democratic basis, and based on real militant rank and file forces, and not superficial creation at the level of social networks and alternative medias. This new international political forces should be capable to convoke to action broad sectors of the masses. In this, if it is the case, the Fourth International, I think, should participate. Okay, and to finish with the first question, expropriating the capitalist shareholders of the banks and socializing the bank give you an answer to the cancellation or abolition of the illegitimate private debt, because you can do that if you take the control of the banks, because it's not complicated to cancel, to write off debt in the account of a bank. And if you think about what happened in several historical experiences, the Bolshevik Revolution, one of the first measures taken by the Soviets was to expropriate the banks in December 1917 and to cancel all the peasant debt to the banks. And it helps a lot the peasantry. The workers had no debt to the banks because they had no money to put in the banks in this epoch. And when happened the Cuban Revolution at the beginning of 1959, they decide also to abolish all the, for instance, mortgage debt. And they say that all the people paying a rent to the owners can keep on occupying the houses and begin to be the owners of the houses and cancelling all the this type of private debt. So I think that it is already part historically of a revolutionary program. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And then we'll have time for the last question, and that's Enrique Rodriguez from Peru. Will speak in Spanish or Castellano. So his translation is Castilian translation ready?
Yes, it's ready.
Wonderful. And that will be the last question for this event.
Okay. If I want to listen in Spanish, I change the channel in the...
Solamente hablo español.
Okay.
So he only speaks Spanish. So you said before about the challenges we are facing, that we had to connect the social movement with the political organization. I'm saying this because here in Peru, this is the second country. It's the second country with facing an election process, and it's been very hard for us to have all the left to join a common project. Now we are seeing how, for instance, the government is giving 60,000 soles to the. So there's a huge crisis at the moment, and the government is intervening in favor of the private sector, and this is an opportunity. I think this is an opportunity for the left, and it's very hard for us how to find some common ground on the program level. Here, for example, we agree on the issue of the new constitution, but the leaderships, so I found very interesting the link you established between the democratic program with our anti-capitalist program, thinking about an election process in the framework of the coronavirus. So what I wanted to state was this. So hello from all the comrades from Sumade here in Peru.
Okay. Should I answer?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think that one of the challenge of the pardon. Sorry, I have to change the channel. Okay. Because I was listening directly into Spanish and not in English. What the comrade was telling. No, it's clear that another challenge for the revolutionaries is the question of unity and the capacity of to build something together. And it's clear that there is a real problem in the radical left to be capable to develop collaboration. The competition between different, including Trotskyist current, the competition between them, it's a very negative thing, because we need really to find a way to have a common platform of a common program. We can have divergence about, for instance, was the USSR a capitalist, a state capitalism, or was it still a bureaucratic, degenerated state? We can have divergence about that, but we need to have a common program on anti-capitalist demands, feminist demands, eco-socialist proposal and demands, and we have to elaborate together such a program. And I can tell you, comrade from Peru, that unfortunately it's not a Latin American problem. In Europe, the competition and sectarism between revolutionary forces is very extended. I was part of the Greek experience in 2015, and I saw now that the terrible difficulty of uniting revolutionary forces in a country like Greece, but it is the same in my country, Belgium, and of course France or other countries. So it is a world-scale problem and challenge. And the Force International, of course, is trying to give the priority to building unification, convergence between different revolutionary and anti-capitalist forces, and not only building its own church in the middle of the village and proclaiming itself as the only revolutionary international organization. We are enthusiastic on the question of speaking with other forces, other currents who want to build something together with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. And that was the last question, and thereby the end of the debate. Thank you so much for a good debate. And thank you again, Eric, for wanting to come here on your birthday and do this educational. And yeah, remember tomorrow there's another educational about fascism, authoritarianism, and the far right. And just as with this educational, you have to write the email rebel youth seminar @gmail.com. I wrote it in the chat as well, and then you'll get the link to Zoom. And yeah, thank you for an informative and interesting educational, and enjoy the evening, everyone. And again, happy birthday, Eric.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.